Welcome back, YCN Sports Talk. Jeremy Stout, Dustin Ribellini, and before we get to the college football portion, we do have our lineup of games. Starting on Friday night, we have a college hockey game at 9 p.m., and then Saturday at 12 p.m. starts 4 straight basketball games, college basketball games, and then wrapping up at 8 p.m. with a college hockey Grand Canyon at UT Rio Grande Valley. And don't forget, after our show tonight at 8 o'clock and replayed at 11 p.m., is the high school game of the week, Lebanon at Merrimack Valley. An exciting game down there for Lebanon, and we'll be showing that after this, 8 and 11. So Dustin, getting into college football, obviously a pretty big game wrapping up this week, college football championship. What a great game. First of all, let's just talk about that. I know it's hard. People say it was the greatest game ever, greatest game in a long time, but it was just a pretty good game overall.
It was just a great football game to watch. Exciting from start to finish. A little slow to begin with.
Yeah.
Not really a whole lot of offense in the first half, but then you saw both teams adjusting after halftime, really opened up in the second half. And like you said, it's hard to always quantify which game's better because they're from different eras. The old school people might have liked USC Texas back in 2006 comes to mind. The 2002 Miami Ohio State game. So it's always hard to quantify which game's better. But for me as a fan, it's just fun to watch good football.
Right.
Like you said, this was a very good football game. Easily the 2 best teams in college football, and congrats to Clemson for coming out on top.
And we'll go into Clemson first when we talk about the 2 coaches. Dabo Swinney winning the championship after getting there last year. Clemson's first championship since 1981, I believe. And what is his legacy, and what does Clemson do going forward? We'll talk about him first. Obviously, Deshaun Watson leaving, Mike Williams, the receiver. We'll talk about them. But can they use this as a springboard, or is this going to be one of those situations where they'll always be in the conversation, but they're never going to get that high? Where does Swinney rank?
I think Clemson's going to be just fine. Okay, they're going to lose Deshaun Watson. We know he's going to be a first-round pick in the NFL. They're going to lose Mike Williams, who is the number 1 rated receiver coming out of college right now. You got to remember, Dabo Swinney got there 8 years ago. He's now turned this team into a national champion. A couple years ago, they won the Orange Bowl over Ohio State. They were in the conference or the national championship last year. So I think this team is still going to be in the conversation. Yes, they're going to lose a lot of talent. They're going to have to replace a lot of talent at the college level. It's always hard, but this team's not going anywhere. This team's going to be around for a long time.
And clearly, Clemson has, when you talk about the program as a whole, not just the coach, they've clearly established themselves, and so that means they're going to get recruits and they're going to get players. Obviously, Swinney's the head man there, but now it's not just, you have, if you want to go to the ACC, you have Florida State and Miami and those teams.
Right.
Now Clemson is in that big picture.
And they're probably on top in the ACC.
Right,
well, obviously they're on top.
Right, but for years to come as well.
Yes.
So now switching over to Nick Saban, obviously doesn't hurt his legacy. He gets to the college championship and loses, but some people are saying, maybe the greatest ever over Bear Bryant and all this, and he's still great. But does it not take a hit, but what does it do to his? It's kind of hard to quantify, I guess.
Yeah, it is, because he's been so good. He's won the 5 championships so far. Sure, he was looking for that back-to-back at Alabama, which it's hard to win back-to-back in any sport, let alone college sports. I think Nick Saban's still one of the top 2 or 3 best college coaches ever. Again, how do you quantify it?
Right.
So Bear Bryant, John Wooden in basketball, they have a lot of championships, but this day and age it's harder to win. Back then it might have been a little bit easier. So Nick Saban, his legacy was not tarnished in any means by this. They lost but with 1 second to go. They were leading the game with 6 seconds to go, and they just couldn't make up the last play. So I think Alabama's still going to be.
And that's the hard part when you're comparing these 2 teams, because literally 1 second, the play goes 1 second longer, it's incomplete, they win, and we're talking about Nick Saban as probably the greatest coach ever. So he doesn't take a hit, but he maybe doesn't get the praise as he should. So you did mention Deshaun Watson going in the first round. Does this game help his legacy in last year's game, where he performed beautifully on the big stage? So does that, when you're evaluating him, does that kind of that intangible thing?
Right. It doesn't hurt his legacy by any means. It's not like the last 2 years hurt him at all. I don't know if it helped him per se. I mean, I was reading some stuff that said he had a good grade as it was to begin with, and this just kind of solidified that. That he can go up against the closest thing to a pro-style defense that there is in college. He's a phenomenal player. He's a good athlete. I don't know if he's a step in day one in the NFL and contribute to a team, but I think he's still going to go in that mid to late first round range, have a chance to start in the right system. But I think for a guy like Watson, it might not hurt him to kind of fall into that Dak Prescott role where you have a lot of talent around you. We've seen many quarterbacks fail without talent. He still needs talent around him to succeed. Right,
and it seems like that is a good name that you mentioned, that Dak Prescott. He seems like he is able to run a little bit more maybe, but he doesn't rely on his running ability. He's able to throw the ball, and he's not because that's the big thing in the NFL. That doesn't translate, that running style. We've seen that before. So it's one of those guys who he knows he can do it if he needs to, but he doesn't fall back on it. So it'll be interesting. Probably, like you said, mid-first round.
Yeah, I see him that mid to late first.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap up the college football segment and the college football for another year. I'm sure we'll talk about it later when the draft's coming up. We're going to have one final segment. We'll get into some local stuff. Dartmouth College men opening the Ivy League season, and then our Salt Hill Pub picks of the week. When we come back, we're watching YCN Sports Talk.